Last week I wrote about the importance of knowing the rules before trying to bend them. By being daring and breaking new ground, we can take some active measures to keep our heads above the slop tide. It still might not be enough. There's also the reality that we can't all be genre-redefining creative geniuses. Sometimes we just want to write what we want to write without the pressure of reinventing the art form. If there's a challenge, it's in proving that we're alive in the first place. In hostage negotiation, there's the concept of proof of life. If someone's been kidnapped, those negotiating for their release want proof that the hostage is still alive before agreeing to any kind of terms. That's the situation we all now find ourselves in. Creators are hostages and readers are the negotiators. They need to see proof of life. Let's rewind a step though. Why is any of this necessary? In March, the US publication of novel Shy Girl was cancelled after it emerged that it had been at least partially written by generative AI. Awkwardly, the book was already published in the UK and presumably had been sold and reviewed and read by people for months. The book started life online and jumped from self-published to trad when Hachette picked it up. Questions were obvious. Did nobody at Hachette read the book? Did they not talk to the author? What's the point of the arduous process of traditional publishing if something like this can happen? Author Mia Ballard claimed that the AI contributions were inserted by an editor friend and that she hadn't reread the manuscript to check, which is actually more peculiar. What author doesn't read their own book after it's been externally edited? The main consequence has been an increased awareness of how Big Five sub-imprints are used to bypass some of the expected quality controls. It's a risky gambit, given that the USP of traditional publishing is that they've done the vetting and you can be sure of buying a quality product. All of this not long after the Salt Path controversy, which also indicated an unexpected lack of checks. Weirdo almost politician Matt Goodwin in the UK had to contend with awkward interviews after his new book, Suicide of a Nation, was published complete with URLs containing ChatGPT links. Reviews of video games are appearing that appeared to be written entirely by AI, with fake journalists attributed. Previously legit review sites are being bought by content farm companies that are churning out AI slop while benefiting from the site's previously decent search rank. Lots of money is made from ads along the way. Ted Goyer writes an annual list of the best essays he's read, and the 2025 edition included a piece by Fyodor. It subsequently turned out that the essay was written by AI and Ted removed it from the list. The inevitable provocation: if you can't tell whether it's written by a human or AI, why does it matter, as long as it's good? It's a dull philosophical question. It's not about some sort of one-upmanship, of proving the superiority of machines over organics or vice versa. The arguments of that debate are irrelevant to my main point, which is, I want to read stuff by people. I don't care how good or bad AI is at generated text, video and images. That's not the point. Computers have been amazingly proficient at playing chess for decades, but I'm not going to watch a couple of AIs playing a match. The entire point of existing is to interact and communicate with other humans. We're now in a phase of never quite knowing. Trust is a risk. It's not just that some people are trying to pass off AI slop as their own. The bigger problem, I think, is that those of us who are not generating our text are now compelled to prove it. If someone is thinking of subscribing to my newsletter or of reading one of my serials, they now have to first figure out if I'm using AI. Naomi Alderman posted recently, and I quote, "God, I miss 4 years ago when I could read an article and not be constantly on my guard for the LLM voice. I miss that non-anxious reading experience." End quote. In Naomi's note, she also mentions that she has no problem with AI use as long as it's declared. At that point, everyone knows what's going on and can make their own informed decision. Personally, I don't think it's quite that simple due to the many ethical issues surrounding the technology before we even get to the generative moment, but certainly in theory, if someone was to ethically build an LLM using sanctioned and licensed training material and was able to run it in an environmentally sustainable and low-impact way, and users disclosed its use, I'd have absolutely no problem with that. I would likely make use of such a system myself in specific use cases, none of which would be related to writing. The tricky thing is that this only goes one way. It works when someone discloses use of AI, whether it was light touch or going all in. The use of AI is confirmed and clear, and everyone can respond accordingly. But if someone doesn't disclose AI use, that doesn't confirm that they didn't use it. Even if someone actively declares that they don't use AI, that still proves nothing. Over on my About page, I have an AI declaration. I outline how I experimented with Midjourney in 2022, then stopped using all forms of generative AI at the beginning of 2023. When AI writing was extremely low quality and obvious to anyone paying attention, this was enough. In 2026, it might not be. How does a potential reader know that I didn't simply generate the About page in ChatGPT? We're now in an age of extreme uncertainty. Text, images, video, and audio can all be replicated and generated at scale. If you're someone who has any kind of digital presence, if you've ever uploaded a video of yourself speaking with your name attached, you can now be digitally cloned. There was a lot of video of me talking to camera, and it would be fairly trivial for someone to create a voice match in a digital avatar and video call my parents asking for financial assistance. Voice and face authentication for computer logins or telephone banking are no longer secure. Even away from overt scams, how can we trust anything or anyone we encounter online? Just because I claim to not use AI for my writing, how can you know for sure? The inevitability cult are pushing back against declarations. Video game platform Steam requires games to disclose use of AI, and Tim Sweeney, the CEO of rival store Epic, recently commented that he thought such disclosure was pointless, and, quote, "It makes no sense for game stores where AI will be involved in nearly all future productions," end quote. The pushback against disclosure is telling. There's really no downside to such notices. Anyone who doesn't care about AI use will ignore them, while those who do care can make an informed decision. The only reason to push back against disclosure would be a secret fear that the majority of customers don't want games made with AI. It's the same mentality seen in the UK government's initial suggestion to force creators to explicitly opt out of their work being used for AI training. Opt-outs are traditionally only used when you know that nobody will willingly opt in. This is why legislation was passed to force companies to use opt-in for marketing communications. The opt-out preferred approach has subsequently been dropped by the UK government in favour of a more nuanced approach, still to be confirmed, after literally everybody in the country pointed out the cynicism. Some organisations are attempting to formalise AI disclosure. The Society of Authors have launched the Human Authored Scheme for their members. Hilariously, the initial version of the website made use of AI-generated images. Declarations and disclosure are a sticky plaster, rather than an actual fix. Useful, but only if you already trust the person making the statements. A couple of quick notes about detecting AI use. There are tools that claim to be able to identify AI-generated text. They're not very good. The more sophisticated AI-generated text becomes, the less effective these detectors will be. Then there are the growing lists of, in quotes, AI tells. There are posts all over LinkedIn and Substack with comprehensive lists of things to watch out for. M-dashes, odd phrasings, the infamous not this, but this cliché. All of these are problematic because they're all valid writing techniques. LLMs are trained on human writing after all. They're not making up anything new by definition. The more we outlaw certain sentence structures, grammatical quirks, and punctuation, the fewer options we have left as human writers. It's a race to the bottom, in other words. It forces humans to contort themselves in order to avoid being mislabeled as AI. It's the Blade Runner Voight Kampff test, inverted and applied to every writer. It's about testing for humanity rather than for artificiality. We're risking a creative witch hunt. In the age of uncanny uncertainty, false positives abound. Everyone is assumed to be guilty. The real problem is not that AI will replace authors, it's that readers will never really trust what they're reading. The Turing test was about testing for intelligence in a machine, but a test to confirm the presence of a real human seems increasingly paramount, especially with any online interactions. I've been thinking here of fiction writers because that's what I write. All of this can be extended beyond fiction, beyond art, into areas of news reporting, political propaganda, health advice. Misinformation is entering its golden age. All of this is a distraction. As we turn on each other and lose trust, our suspicions and responses are misdirected. We should be hunting the tech companies and the weird men at their helms, rather than people using the tools. Follow the money and punish the dealers, not the users. Let's get down to practical solutions. I'll say up front that some of this is going to be unpalatable to some people, especially anyone who just wants to write. None of this is ideal, but it's where we find ourselves. Technology has put us in this annoying space, but it also gives us the tools to deal with it. Text on its own, in the form of a story or essay, is now irritatingly vulnerable to false positives, dodgy accusations, and so on. How can readers be sure that there's a real person on the other end when all they have is the finished text? My thinking is that radical openness is the best counter to the risk of falling prey to Gen AI's uncanny uncertainty. Alas, it's a difficult time to be a mysterious, aloof, serious literary author who wants to let the work speak for itself. Most of what I'm about to outline I was already doing because I enjoy it, and it's mostly coincidence that it's turned out to be a convenient way to evidence that I'm a real fleshy thing on the other end of the words. So, in no particular order. Write a newsletter. Hyperscaled social media as a useful tool for individual creators has long been dead. Your followers never see anything you post, engagement is dreadful, and trying to game the ad-addicted algorithms is precisely the sort of thing AI agents are good at. Many of the big tech companies investing most heavily in AI also own the social platforms, so there's an unhealthy feedback loop there. Instead, going old school is advisable. Write a newsletter, invite readers to subscribe, go direct to their inboxes. It's just you and them. There's been some investigation into how many newsletters are already AI generated. It looks like some categories are particularly prone to AI slop, things like tech, health, philosophy. The cynic in me might argue that those categories have always been prone to slop long before the advent of AI. Point is, a newsletter is a vital part of the process, but it isn't a magic bullet. There's no single solution. Proving that we exist becomes easier the more points of evidence we accumulate. Behind the scenes. It's exceedingly easy to generate text from an LLM. Generating an entire novel is increasingly simple regardless of what we think of its quality. What is trickier is to provide a look behind the scenes at the creation of the novel. The process of a human creating a novel takes years of effort, from the initial spark of an idea to the finished manuscript, even longer if we factor in that person's lifetime of experiences, all of which are present in the text, subliminally or otherwise. Revealing some of that process goes a long way to demonstrating proof of life. Generating a novel bypasses all of that process, so there's nothing to talk about. Fabricating a convincing examination of process is unlikely to be convincing. This could be a day-in-the-life diary during the writing, or a retrospective on the writing and publishing process. Write about inspirations, or where you were when you were writing. Discuss the work in detail. Get me talking about one of my characters and I'll wang on for hours. Want to know which specific real-world events inspired particular scenes in Tales from the Triverse? Curious about which of the book's themes are most important to me and why? Authors can talk in endless detail about these things because we've lived them for months and years. People using AI most cynically to generate slop books probably haven't even read them prior to publication. They can't answer questions about the text because they don't know the text. Talking about this stuff, especially in external interviews, is a good way to prove that you're the real deal. Do interviews and conversations. Following up from the previous point, the more you show up in interviews, be they text or video or audio, the better. Sure, all of those things can be generated and faked to some degree, but it's difficult to sustain that fakery over the long term. Do live streams. It's incredibly easy to do live streaming these days via YouTube, Twitch, Substack, or various other platforms. While live video can be generated, it's difficult to do convincingly. Oddly, the more professional a broadcast, the easier it can be to fake. It's the weird quirks and interruptions, unexpected moments in DIY streams that help to make them real. Live audience interaction goes a long way. Do in-person events. All of the above that I've mentioned so far are digital interactions. A really good, effective way to prove you're live is to simply show up places. It's not scalable, but every time you speak on a panel, or attend a book club, or have a table at a book fair, you're showing that you exist. It's a chance for readers to interact with you and ask you those tricky questions about your characters and themes and plot. Be your normal weird self. Don't LinkedInify. There's a mode of writing on LinkedIn that we've all encountered. Insincere, obsequious, desperate to impress. Everyone doing their best to sound like everyone else, sanding down their sharp edges and dressing for work. It's no surprise that the LinkedIn UI is plastered with buttons to rewrite posts using AI. As one of the least genuine places on the internet, it's ripe for generative takeover. Don't do that as an author. Sounding like everyone else also means sounding like LLMs, because LLMs are literally trained on the writing of everyone. Be quirky, embrace your weird bits and bobs, and let your personality speak for itself. It won't work for everyone, but it'll be you, and you'll find people who are into that. Interact with people. Don't just be in broadcast mode all the time. Interacting with people, taking part in conversations, contributing to communities, these are all things which help people to believe that you're really behind the keyboard. While AI bot replies are increasingly a thing, they also tend to be quite obvious. Auto-generating responses doesn't work at scale because it becomes incredibly obvious and difficult to maintain over a long timeline. Or simply ignore it all. I'm acutely aware that this is all quite dystopian. We shouldn't have to prove that we're human and that our work is human-made. But this is the timeline in which we find ourselves, at least for now. If you just want to write and absolutely cannot be bothered with any of the above, that's 100% fine. Whatever you do, don't feel obligated into doing a load of supplementary crap that you don't want to do. It'll make you hate the writing process, which is no good for anyone. I do quite a lot of these activities I listed because I enjoy doing them. Coincidentally, I think they also help readers to trust that I'm actually here, typing these words into the computer. My point, though, if I have one, after all this rambling, is that we're not helpless. Last week I wrote about building rafts to stay afloat on the oncoming tide of slop, and today's post carries on that thought. We have tools at our disposal. Use whichever ones you see fit. Thanks for listening. I'm Simon K. Jones, and you can leave comments. Find more of my writing over at simonkjones.substack.com.